Welcome back, everybody. It's the RP show on a Monday. Don't mind me. I just was alerted by other life. Tampa Bay Lightning head coach John Cooper has named his staff for Team Canada for the Olympics, 2026 Winter Olympics. John Cooper of the Tampa Bay Lightning. As you know, I host the Florida hockey show. Before we get to all that, Dave Campbell joins us from Edmonton Elks Radio. Ched, Edmonton. David, hey, brother. What are you
How
guys
you
going
doing?
by now? Yeah, I'm doing good. I just can't figure out 6:30 Ched. It's not that anymore. What are you guys
No,
calling
we're
yourself?
we're 880 Ched now.
880
We
Ched. Okay.
we just moved down the street. That's all we basically did. So
Did you
yeah,
physically move or just move down the dial?
yeah, just moved down the dial. So same building, like nothing really changed except obviously the frequency changed. Which for me who's worked at 630 for almost 30 years, to go to 880 was a little weird, and there was a little nostalgia there that you kind of were a little sad about. But no, we're the mighty 880 Ched.
I got you. All right. 6:30 Ched. What do you think, Farley? I'll tell you what you think, Farley. Yeah, that never gets old. Hey, just on
It
the
takes us
breaking
back.
news, David. Yeah, exactly. The breaking news. I'm just going to say it. We'll start with hockey before we get to the CFL. After leading Canada to victory at this year's Four Nations Face-Off, head coach John Cooper is getting his same support staff for the Milan Cortina Olympics. Hockey Canada announced today that Bruce Cassidy of the Vegas Golden Knights, Rick Tocchet of the Philadelphia Flyers, and former Dallas Stars coach Peter DeBoer will once again serve as assistants on Cooper's staff. Listen, I'm just going to take a Florida view of this and go, no Paul Maurice? Do you guys not like each other? How do you feel about that announcement from Coop?
Well, I think it's the philosophy of if it isn't broke, don't fix it. This group did an excellent job at Four Nations, which, it's a hard tournament to evaluate because it was such a short tournament. But, I think John Cooper did a really nice job of dealing, especially with all that star power on his roster, finding the solutions quickly to make that roster work. Because, coming out of that game against the U.S. and we all remember 3 fights in 9 seconds. That was great, but they were pretty stifled. And I thought John Cooper pushed the right buttons in the game against Finland, and then of course the final against the U.S. So run it back and see if they can win a gold medal in Italy.
Really good point. And, I was in Florida when that tournament was going on, and people are still talking about it in Florida. Big part was the Tkachuk and Matthew Tkachuk's role in it and so forth. And John Cooper was the coach for Canada. Dude, they killed it. And they could not have planned for it to go that well. I mean, the Trump thing, the whatever the hell, the anthems, all that came and made it a perfect storm. Plus, the hockey was sensational, right?
It's the best hockey we saw, and since I know people look at the World Cup in 16, and I'm like, it was a little gimmicky for me. But you go back to 2014 in Sochi, you go back to 2010 in Vancouver. It was just awesome to see finally Connor McDavid play a best-on-best tournament with Sidney Crosby, with Nathan McKinnon, with Cale Makar, and then just to see the power that all 4 teams really have. But obviously, the U.S. and Canada were the best 2 teams, with Canada winning. And it's going to be fun to see a 12-team tournament in Italy. So it's what we needed, I think. The political stuff really fueled it as well. And this nation always rises when they're kind of pushed around, and we kind of showed that we're not going to stand for being, talked about a 51st state. We're one nation. We don't always agree, but man, when it comes to our national pride, we got it, baby.
Dave, did you ever say that well? You should consider a career in broadcasting because you spoke it very well. You said it very well.
Thank you.
In Canada, it takes a while for us to pump our chest. In America, we do it every day. That's just the American way. That's the difference between the two. We'll come back on McDavid in a second. We got to get to the CFL because it's summer. And what's a guy like you get up to on a bye week as the Edmonton Elks had a bye in week 7?
Well, and I hope you appreciate the extra light because I'm trying to bring in more light around a team that's kind of going through the darkness again. It was just nice to get away from, the routine of football. And I mean, coming off a bad loss, obviously that kind of makes it a little bit more kind of nice to get away a little bit. But they were back yesterday, extra day of practice, getting ready to play the Riders in Regina on Friday. And obviously questions. There's questions about, is Trey Ford or Cody Fajardo going to start at quarterback? The defense, it's baffling how honestly bad they've been this year. So a team that's, it is a new program. The right people are in place. The vibe within the organization, within the walls of the organization, are where it needs to be. The culture is going back to where it should be, but the wins are taking longer to find. And I think even, those within the club are a little surprised how I think they knew they were going to be bumps in the road early, but maybe this was a little bumpier than they expected.
I saw it coming. I'm a fan of where they're going. Direction is more important than speed. You're going the right direction, not as fast as you'd like, but at least after years of spinning your tires or going the wrong way, at least you got it going in the right direction. Now, I was on Edmonton radio this morning, not yours, by the way. I haven't been invited there for a while, but another
that's
station.
Okay.
And
we'll try and change that.
They asked about the starting quarterback Friday night with the Elks at Riders, and I said, you got to go with Trey Ford because when you sit him down, Dave, I don't think you come back from that. I don't.
Yeah, it's an interesting debate because we're talking about developing Trey Ford. This is his 4th year. And in his first 3 years, obviously, there was some interesting drama around him with Chris Jones drafting him, and the reasons why he drafted him 8th overall to begin with. Was it really because Trey Ford was a quarterback, or did he see kind of a gadget-type player? Because I remember the day he drafted him, he didn't mention really all that much about his quarterbacking skills. He mentioned what a good athlete he was. But just to quickly go through it, we know that he starts, early in the season in 22 in his rookie year. He wins, then he gets hurt. We don't see him till the end of the year. 23, he comes in when they're 0-8. And he popped and then kind of struggled at the end. And then last year he comes in, popped again after this team was 0-7. They win a couple games. He gets hurt again. He comes back, doesn't look as good, loses the job, and then looks good at the end of the season in the 2 wins against Calgary and home against Toronto. And then obviously Ed Hervey comes in, Mark Killam comes in, Jordan Maxima comes in as the OC, and Trey Ford is the anointed one as the starter, which I agreed with because I'm like, you might as well see what you got in him as a starter. As the starter, as being named the starter going into camp, then you bring Cody Fajardo as the insurance. And honestly, I don't think Trey Ford has been awful. I think the first 7 quarters have been, his first 7 quarters were not good. His next 9 were overall pretty good, and the last 4 were not good. The defense, again, I will say, is the biggest issue on this football team. But the thing with Trey Ford is that he's a bit of a dice roll. He's a dice roll, dart throw, coin flip. You're not sure what you're going to get from him. And yesterday they had very limited time on field because it was the first practice after a bye. They ran about 5 offensive plays for the first team, and he ran all of them. I do suspect Cody Fajardo might get some consideration, though, but it's an interesting debate, right? And, this is different for Trey Ford because he's been the starter from day one. And in the development phase, and that's an uncomfortable word, and that's maybe an awkward word because it's like you're in year 4. How much more developing do you need? And he is limited still with the skill set as a quarterback. I don't think he's, when you compare him from 22 to now, I mean, he's a better quarterback, but there's still some things about Trey Ford's game that is a little head scratching. But at the same time, you look at the game last week against the Lions, he underthrew a receiver, which resulted in an interception. He overthrew about 3 or 4 more. The reads were correct. His eyes went to the right spot, but it's the execution, right? So we haven't seen the best out of Trey Ford, I believe. And to your point, I mean, do you lose him if you sit him down? I don't know if you would lose him, but maybe that's the test too, is why should this derail you in your development? Maybe stepping back is what you need if they decide to go the route of Cody Fajardo on Friday.
Well, you always know what you're going to get out of Cody. We've seen it this year in the limited play with Edmonton, high completion percentage and all the rest. You know what you're going to get out of him. And with Trey, it's not just what it does to him, it's the message it sends to the locker room if you don't start him. But the first 3 years of his career, I would say, have been a complete abomination. So let's forget about that. He didn't develop at all for the last 3 years and all the crap that he went through. I'm a Trey Ford fan, but I just think you got to go with the guys you've put in those positions until it's time not to, and I don't think it's time not to yet. Now, you brought this up. Rich in Edmonton writes in, great guy. Where you been, Rich? Haven't seen you here for a while. He says, J.C. Sherritt, your defensive coordinator. Is it too soon in his coaching career to be coordinator? It sure looks like it.
Yeah, I think there's definite struggles with J.C. Sherritt as the defensive coordinator. A young coordinator who's been in football as a coach since 2019 and was a highly sought-after defensive coach last year, obviously, because he did a good job with the Riders under Corey Mace. But I guess, what we're seeing with JC is I think he's kind of struggling to see where his comfort level is with his play calling to what he has as a defensive unit, which I think on paper is still pretty good. I think that front six should be one of the best units in the league. I think their front four has played actually quite well. They're just not getting rewarded. Or I'll say it another way. They're not executing, they're not finishing plays. So they're getting pressure on quarterbacks. They actually have been pretty good against the run. Nick Anderson tackles everything. Niles Morgan, I don't think it's been a Niles Morgan type season, but I don't think he's been bad. That secondary, holy smokes. And especially when I don't talk about the whole secondary, but I'm looking at that weak side, with Devondrick Bynum, with Cordell Jackson, even excuse me, Royce Metier hasn't had a great season, in my opinion. On the other side, I think Tyrell Ford has because no one throws to him, and Kobe Williams has been up and down. So then you got a young coach in there, Aaron Grimes, right? So, and this comment was made to me not too long ago about how they defend the RPO, the run pass option. It looks like they've never seen it before, the way they coach it. So the comment that was made to me with someone very close to the club is just look at what other teams do against the RPO and do that. Just simplify it, okay? So the coaching definitely has a lot of responsibility here in why this defense is struggling. And part of it is, they are young, but there is a lot of veteran savvy, especially with that front six. And it's just finding the balance, right? And I think the communication at times is a little spotty. I think they get, when they give up a explosion play, there's a bit of a sag there. But this defense, I mean, they're getting smashed in every single game except the Ottawa game. They played well, I thought, overall. But yeah, this defense is getting smashed, and I think the coaching has something to do with
it. From the audience. Rich in Edmonton says, I've been holidaying in Quebec, Rod. What? They don't have the internet out there? Can't watch the RP show on YouTube? Shy writes in and says, Rod, but you're buds with Fajardo. Not anti-Fajardo. We always know what you're going to get with Cody. I'm not advocating not to start Cody, which, by the way, Cody and I are always good. We're brothers in Christ. And Dave knows what that's about. We always got each other's back. So I can speak for him. Yep. He can speak for me. That's what we do. And probably Cody's saying, well, Cody wants to play, but there's no better. Well, I would say there's no better team guy than Cody, but here, you know what they'll say? Yeah, but he threw his receivers under the bus when he was here. Probably would walk that back if he could. That started the end of his time here. Yeah, go ahead.
And to that point, I mean, does it sting for Cody that he's not a starter in 25 after winning a Grey Cup in 23 with Montreal? Yeah, it does. But when he was traded here, it didn't take him long to restructure his contract. So I think he saw the vision and was sold on the vision very quickly. And here's the thing with Ed Hervey as a general manager and VP of football ops. He's going to be honest with you and straight with you. Okay? There's going to be no mind games, no head games. If you don't like what he says, at least he's honest with you. And I think that's Ed's best attribute. I think I see it out of Mark Killam. We had Cody on our post-game show after last week's loss to the BC Lions. We didn't want to talk to Trey Ford. We went right to Cody Fajardo. And he spoke so well about his role as a mentor, about where the team is at right now. He didn't think it was, even though the score didn't reflect it, he felt, Trey played fairly well because his eyes were going to the right spots on the field. He just wasn't executing. This is a great mentor for Trey Ford to have. There's no question. And if he has to play, if he's tapped on the shoulder and they say, Cody, get in there on Friday, he'll do it because that's the guy he is, and he will prepare as the starter. He knows how to be the starter. But for Trey Ford, Cody has been an awesome mentor for him.
Rich in Edmonton says, tough call. Do you stick with a young quarterback and see what you got, or play Fajardo, who gives you the best chance to win at this point in time? Well, it's not must-win time. I know they're going to tell you every game's must-win, but not every game is must-win. This isn't the playoffs. This is a different situation than that. Brent in Wellington, Florida writes in, and I appreciate him. I'm going to be calling you later, Brent, by the way. He says, I'm not a big CFL guy, but I sat with some friends and actually watched the Riders game Saturday night. After explaining some of the rule differences, we were impressed and entertained. Oh, my God. Some guy from Newfoundland wrote in here last hour, Dave. He's like, you actually got me watching CFL, Rod. I'm like, well, don't have a gun to your head. I love it. We talk about it. Give it a try, and you'll love it, which reminds me, we got a few minutes here to wrap this up with what I wanted to ask you, that what everybody's talking about in the CFL. What do you think of Luke Wilson, the former Seattle Seahawks Super Bowl winning tight end, now the sideline reporter on the CFL on TSN? I'm calling him the Tony Siragusa of the CFL. Yeah. What do you think about him? Everybody's got an opinion.
Well, he's not afraid to engage on social media, which you and I know can be a very precarious situation. I'd rather not. Yeah, I'd rather not, to be honest with you. But Luke has that personality that I think he can handle. He's got big shoulders. He's got thick skin. Sometimes I wonder if he toes the line of the comfortability of Stuart Johnson, the commissioner. But I think Stuart Johnson has said it. Another guy who just speaks honestly, in my opinion. I think Luke has been good for the league. Watch his videos. I mean, Luke dissecting one play for 9 minutes. And for someone who is a film junkie and a video junkie, I loved it. If you want to learn the game, that's why Luke is so important. That's why Paul LaPolice is so important. And Luke is not trashing the league. Luke, I think, really sees the value of this league. The man works. I was wondering how this was going to work, or this was going to translate. Luke Wilson has been phenomenal with his coverage. He brings insights that make you think, that maybe you haven't heard about before, or just brings it in a way that's, not always conventional, but it's very, very, it makes so much sense what he says, right? He thinks the game very, very well at a very high level. And that's what I enjoy about him. He's funny. I love that he embraces every city he goes to. And does he poke a little fun? Sure. But the man is serious about his craft, and he has a great time. I love him. I think he's been great for the league.
He's speaking from the heart, which I always have too. But that's going to bring some heat. Brent in Wellington, Florida says borderline controversial gets ratings. Proven. Like I said, who's the last guy that you said, I can't wait to flip on the TV to see what he has to say? The last guy was Grapes. Like, I love Biz, but I don't care what he has to say. Like, I'm not eagerly anticipating anybody but Luke Wilson on any time. Oh, he's gone. Okay, thanks, Corey. Thank you, Dave. Soupy Campbell. We'll be right back, everybody, with a sports update and viewer takeover after this.